I'm 88 years old, and most days are quiet now. Quiet enough that I can hear my own thoughts too clearly. There's one thought that comes back more than the others, and it's this. I regret how I treated the people who loved me when they were still here to feel it. I don't say that lightly. I've had a long life, longer than many, and for most of it, I thought I was doing fine. I thought I was being responsible, useful, necessary. I didn't think of myself as cruel or careless. I thought I was doing what needed to be done, but time has a way of stripping things down. When there's less ahead than behind, you stop defending yourself. You stop explaining. You just look at what is. Right now, what is an old man in a small room, surrounded by objects that once belonged to people who are gone. I wake up early, even though there's nowhere I need to be. My body still thinks it has somewhere important to go. I sit on the edge of the bed for a while, waiting for my knees to agree with me. Sometimes I reach for the other side of the mattress out of habit, and then I remember that side has been empty for years. People talk about missing someone like it's a sharp pain. For me, it's more like a dull weight. It doesn't scream, it just sits there. I didn't always live like this. There was a time when the house was loud, not joyful all the time, but alive. Voices in different rooms, doors opening and closing, arguments about small things that felt big back then. I was in my 20s when I first started believing that being busy was the same as being needed. I worked hard, long hours. I told myself it was for my family, and in some ways, it was. We needed the money. We needed stability. That part was true. What I didn't see was how often later became my answer to everything else. Later, we'll talk. Later, we'll take a trip. Later, I'll sit down and listen properly. Later felt reasonable, sensible even. I wasn't an absent father in the way people imagine. I was there, physically. I came home most nights. I paid the bills. I fixed what broke. If someone needed help with something practical, I showed up. But I was tired, always tired. And I wore that tiredness like proof that I was doing my job. My wife would try to talk to me in the evenings. Nothing dramatic, just things about her day, the kids, something she'd read. I'd half listen while scanning the paper or staring at the television. I'd nod at the right moments. Sometimes I'd answer without really hearing the question. She noticed. Of course she did. She'd say my name once, a little sharper the second time. I'd sigh, not loudly, but enough. I didn't mean it unkindly. I just wanted a few minutes of quiet. I thought I'd earned that. What I didn't understand was that she wasn't asking for much, just presence. Just to feel like she mattered more than my exhaustion. With the children, it was similar. I went to some events, missed others. I always had a reason, deadlines, overtime, things that couldn't be moved, and sometimes they really couldn't. But sometimes, I just didn't want to rearrange my life. When they were small, they'd run to the door when I came home. I can still see it. Shoes kicked off, voices overlapping. That didn't last forever. I didn't notice when it stopped. Those things don't announce themselves. As they got older, conversations became shorter, more factual. I mistook that for independence. I told myself they didn't need me as much anymore. That was easier than asking whether they'd stopped trying. I wasn't unloving. I just assumed love was understood. I assumed it didn't need to be shown all the time. Years passed like that. One job led to another. Responsibilities stacked up. My calendar stayed full. On paper, it looked like a solid life. The cost was quiet. It was my wife stopping mid-sentence more often. It was my children sharing less about their inner lives. It was birthdays marked with practical gifts instead of attention. It was saying, "next time," so often that it lost meaning. I remember one evening clearly. My daughter was in her late teens. She was sitting at the kitchen table, not eating, just moving food around her plate. I was standing halfway out the door, briefcase in hand. She said, "Do you have a minute?" I looked at my watch. I still remember that. I said, "Can it wait until later? I'm running behind." She shrugged and said, "It's fine." That was the end of it. There was no argument, no tears, just a door closing somewhere inside her that I didn't hear. Later never came. I didn't realize moments could expire. The turning point, if you can call it that, didn't come with fireworks. It came with a phone call from a doctor. My wife had been tired for months. We thought it was stress. Life had been busy. There was always something. The diagnosis was blunt, efficient, the kind of words that rearrange a life in a single afternoon. I sat beside her in the hospital, holding her hand, surrounded by machines that hummed and beeped like they were trying to be helpful. She looked smaller there, fragile, in a way I wasn't prepared for. She didn't accuse me of anything. That's what makes it worse. She talked about ordinary things. She asked if the bills were paid, if the kids were okay. She worried about everyone but herself. One night, very late, she said, "I wish we'd had more time together, just us." I told her we had plenty of time. Even as I said it, I felt something crack, because part of me knew it wasn't true. She smiled at me, not sadly, just tired. That smile still visits me when I can't sleep. After she died, the house felt wrong. Not empty, exactly. More like it had forgotten how to breathe. I moved through the rooms slowly, as if sound itself might disturb something sacred. The children came, of course. They helped. They were kind. But there was a distance I couldn't cross anymore. They had their own lives, their own rhythms. I was no longer central to them. Maybe I never had been in the way I thought. I tried, then. Too late, but I tried. I called more often. I asked questions I should have asked years before. Sometimes the conversations were warm. Sometimes they were polite. Polite hurts more than anger. One by one, they stopped calling as often. Not out of cruelty, out of habit. Life moved on. Now, at 88, there are things that simply cannot be fixed. I can't go back and sit at that kitchen table. I can't hear what my daughter wanted to say that night. I can't give my wife the years of attention I saved for after things slowed down. They don't slow down. They just end. I used to think being remembered meant being respected, being seen as dependable, strong. What I understand now is that people remember how you made them feel when you had nothing else to do. I'm remembered as reliable and distant. If you're listening to this, I don't know your life. I don't know what pressures you're under. Mine felt real. They were real. I just wish I'd known that love doesn't wait patiently in the background. It needs to be met where it lives, in small moments, in ordinary evenings, in choosing to stay when it would be easier to go. I'm not asking you to change anything. I wouldn't dare. I only know what it's like to reach the end and realize you misunderstood what mattered most. There's still gratitude in me for the years I had, for the people who loved me even when I made it hard. But there's sorrow too, quiet sorrow, the kind that doesn't ask for sympathy. My days are slower now. I sit by the window and watch light move across the floor. I think about voices that used to fill the air. I think about all the things I thought I'd say someday. Someday is a fragile word. If this meant something to you, you can sit with it for a moment. You don't have to do anything else. As for me, I'll keep going as long as I can, with my memories, with my regrets, with my gratitude. This is what I have left.